Let's talk about the new Godzilla movie. Overall, you like it?
I did like it, actually.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, it was good.
Now, we will have a spoiler section later on. We'll warn you when that happens, so for now, you're good. But before we get into anything about it, I just want to talk about the basic history again, just for anybody who doesn't know what this is, just to get you up to speed. It's the first Japanese-made Godzilla film by Toho in 12 years. It's the first to only feature Godzilla and no other monsters since '84. It's the first to feature certain music cues since '54, the original. And it's the first, I think, to be a straight-up reboot. You know, because typically lots of the other ones would always be connected to the original. They'd be like, you know, a sequel to the original, but ignoring all the other ones.
You said there was certain music cues that
Yeah.
are since the original.
Like there were certain...
Because they used the Godzilla theme song in a lot of the sequels.
Yeah, they did, but there was a few music cues from the original that they never used.
Oh, really?
Until now.
Oh, I didn't even
They even
realize
used
that.
a lot of sound effects too, so they did a lot to like sort of tie it with the
Okay.
original. But as far as continuity goes, this one is starting completely over. Even reinvents Godzilla's origin and stuff like that. And also, it's the first to potentially coexist with American-made Godzilla sequels. So we may have two different Godzilla series happening at the same time. So history has repeated itself. Every time there's an American-made Godzilla movie, it always brings the Japanese Godzilla out of hibernation. Like the 1998 version with Matthew Broderick, the one from TriStar. That one wasn't received very well. So then Toho came back and started making them again, and they made 6 of them right there in the early 2000s, and then Godzilla Final Wars was the last of those, and that was in 2004. So it's been that long since there's been a Toho film, and I'm really happy to finally see one.
It would be awesome if the new American Godzilla sets them off to make another 6, because I'm hoping that this isn't the only one of these.
Exactly. I hope that they start making them again. Yeah, the Gareth Edwards one in 2014 from Legendary Pictures, that was a great attempt, I thought, but I still wasn't very satisfied. I had some gripes with it. So what did you think of that one?
It was okay. To me, it just didn't feel like a Godzilla movie. It was my only thing. Godzilla looked a lot more like he should have than in the 1998 version, but it still didn't have that like Toho feeling to it.
There's something about the tone, yeah.
The tone of it, yeah. I thought it was okay though.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I elaborate further in my review of it. So if you want to know more about what I think of that one, watch my second review of that one, because the second one I go more in depth. So the release of this movie has been a little bit confusing because it came out in Japan this past July, and for a while we weren't really sure on when we would ever get to see it here. And then they were saying that a company called New World Cinemas was going to be distributing it here, and that turned out to be completely bogus. And it turned out it was really confusing because New World Pictures was a company that distributed the Godzilla 1985. So this is a totally unrelated company. But anyway, Funimation came in, thankfully, and is releasing it here in some limited theaters. So thanks to Funimation, it is coming out. So we got to see an early screener, but there's other screenings popping up around the U.S. There's a premiere in L.A., which I think just happened, and then one in New York City, and then there's going to be some limited theatrical run October 11th. The movie has 2 titles, and I feel like it wouldn't be a real Godzilla movie if there wasn't more than one title. Shin Godzilla and Godzilla Resurgence, but I don't think they're calling it that anymore. I don't know, because Godzilla Resurgence was supposed to be the American name for it.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, but the version we saw said Shin Godzilla. So I don't know, but Shin means true, new, or God, so I'm just going to call it God Godzilla. After all, they compare him to God in the movie. So anyway, let's talk about the movie more now. So as we said already, it felt more like an authentic Godzilla movie. And that's what I hoped for in my trailer response video when I talked about it. I said that, it's not... For me, it's not a real Godzilla movie unless it's made in Japan.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as champagne. Anybody can make sparkling wine and call it champagne, but if it's not from France, it's not really champagne. Same thing with Godzilla.
I felt the exact same way. Yeah, it's just Japan has a different culture, and I think when anybody else tries to make a Godzilla movie, it just doesn't feel the same way because it's not coming from the same people.
Yeah.
And this movie at least had that feeling to it. There were parts of the movie where I actually felt like, okay, I'm watching an actual Godzilla movie here, which felt good because it's been since Final Wars.
Yeah, and it's hard to pinpoint what that is. Like, there's just something in the tone of it.
It's just a feeling.
Yeah.
And that's why it's hard to sit here and describe it. It's like, oh, the way I felt watching it. It's like I felt that it was a Godzilla movie.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And I still felt like the 2014 version respected the character, and it did a really great job. It was a great attempt, but there was a lot of things that it sort of fell flat on.
It's just like if you think about the old movies and like watching them like in line, I feel like it just seems a little bit out of place. Like it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, that one, in comparison to like the original Toho series, where I felt like this one could have come right after and and been like a natural feeling without feeling like a totally different thing. You know?
And that's not to say this one was perfect either. Like I think it was far from perfect, but it felt more authentic. And when I say it's more authentic, I don't mean it's necessarily better than the 2014 version. I think that's debatable. Like I can see the 2014 one connects with American audiences a lot better. My suspicion is that this one won't connect with American audiences as much.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It's more for the Godzilla fans, I think. So if you're a fan, I think it's a must see. But if not, then you probably shouldn't bother. If you're just just a casual moviegoer or whatever.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah. It needed Bryan Cranston. That would have made it. The thing is, the first act of the 2014 version I thought was amazing. I thought it was a great build-up, but that it just had that really strong first act, and then the rest of it never exceeded that. Let's talk about the special effects. Now, one thing I said in the trailer response video was that it also has to be an actor in a suit for it to be authentic, and it looked like an actor in a suit, but I think this was entirely CG, actually.
Honestly, I couldn't tell one way or the other. I figured like a lot of it was CG, but as I was watching the movie, but there were parts where I was like, oh, that might be a guy in a suit. So to be honest with you, I couldn't tell the difference whether or not it was a suit or not. So I think they did a really good job with that.
Yeah. I have mixed feelings about that. I think, yes, they did a great job. I mean, I was fooled by the trailer. If the trailer was all CG, I was fooled. But I heard that they filmed an actor in a suit. They tried out some puppets and animatronics, but they didn't like the result, so they ended up doing all CG. But there was an actor. There was a motion capture person. But on one hand, I feel really sad to know that when a Godzilla movie isn't using a person in a suit, then the era has totally died, Well,
you know what, though? I mean, if they got it to the point where I couldn't tell the difference, and I don't think you really could either, then it's like, fine. If they do that good a job with it, like, the thing that bothered me is when you watch CG and it looks like CG, but if it looks realistic enough, then okay, fine.
There were some parts that looked a little poor that I could tell, like, okay, that's a CG, but most of it was really good. It looked as if they didn't make Godzilla do much that an actor in a suit couldn't do. So he moved the same way, and like we said, it had the same feel. So I feel like, okay, maybe it's a little less authentic then because it's not an actor in a suit, but it still achieved the same effect and did a good job.
I was fine with it.
In my detailed review of the 2014 version, I talked a lot about how Godzilla looks best when you're looking up at him, and in this, I love the shots. Like the shot choices were, I couldn't have asked for better. Like there was one part I remember where it looked as if the camera was on like a moving vehicle, and it went underneath him, and you're just looking up at him the whole time.
There was a lot of great angles.
Yeah, the camera angles were great.
There was one part that I saw, I think it's in the trailer, it might be, where Godzilla's tail like goes over the buildings. That's one shot I thought was kind of cool, but there was a lot of scenes of Godzilla, or the scenes that there were of Godzilla that's the kind of the problem, is that there wasn't all that much Godzilla in the movie, but when Godzilla was in the movie, all the angles were awesome. So I agree with you.
And they never teased in the same way that the 2014 version would build up to this monster fight, and then it would just cut away and then show the aftermath.
No, it didn't do that.
Yeah, that was bullshit, so I'm glad that they didn't do that. Also, you see Godzilla mostly in the day, so you can see him clear, where in the 2014 version it was always dark and murky, and it's always at night.
There were some night scenes.
There were
in this,
some night scenes, but
and
mainly
I thought that
at
those
day.
were pretty good too. Like even at night, like, you could see him well. Mm-hmm. It was really well lit.
Yeah, it was like you could see everything that was happening.
Yeah.
The music, as we said, they used a lot of stock music from the original and a lot that hasn't been heard since the original. But also they had new music in there, which is in the trailer also, and that I thought was amazing.
Yeah. The part in the movie when the theme song comes on, a lot of people might feel like, oh, okay, here they go, they're using the same music again. But like, it's been 12 years since there's been a Godzilla movie, and honestly, that was one of the parts of the movie where when the music came on, I was like, okay, now it's getting good, because for the first part of the movie, Godzilla isn't really Godzilla yet, but then finally they cut back and Godzilla is now he really looks like Godzilla now, and then also at the same time the theme song comes on, you're like, okay, now I'm watching a Godzilla movie, and he starts fucking shit up, and you're like, this is now awesome. That's the part, at that point I felt like, okay, this is what I came to the theater to see.
True, they did use it when it was appropriate.
Yeah.
Like an example of a movie that they could never get appropriate was the Halloween remakes. Well, the second one didn't even use the music at all. It was like, fuck it, we're not even using it. But the first Halloween remake, Rob Zombie, he would just blow the John Carpenter music all the time in the original and just kind of like overdid it, and then it didn't come in when you want it to. Like you should have first heard it the first time he puts the mask on, and that would have been amazing.
It's interesting, the connection we all have with themes and connecting themes to characters. I remember I have to always mention The Legend of Zelda in every single video, but I had a friend when I was a kid who, when the first time we played Link to the Past together, he was like, oh man, they're using the same music again when it went to the overworld, and I felt totally differently. I was like, oh, this is great. It's the theme from The Legend of Zelda. They're using it again. Now I feel like I'm playing Zelda again. I think,
since you witnessed somebody say that, I wonder if that's the way most people feel, because you know how all these movies, nowadays, like the James Bond movies, you hardly hear the theme, and like all these shitty Transformers movies, they don't have the theme in there, and there's nothing. They don't like to use themes these days, like the Batman theme, all that. It's just.
Yeah, I was going to mention that with the Batman movies, like Christopher Nolan, it's a different series, so I understand why it's totally different music and everything.
Joel Schumacher had his own music. Tim Burton.
When being older and remembering the old 1960s Batman, and remembering the old one with like Jack Nicholson, the Tim Burton Batman, and having that Danny Elfman theme in your head, it becomes so iconic in your mind that, okay, this song represents Batman to me. Or when you're watching Star Trek and you get those little cues of dun 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 dun. Yeah. If that's not in there, a lot of times you don't feel like it's Star Trek. Sometimes when you're watching The Angry Video Game Nerd, when those parts come on, you feel like, there's a reason to use that kind of music. And I can understand why they don't use it sometimes, like with the Christopher Nolan Batman. If the Danny Elfman music came on in the Christopher Nolan movie, it probably wouldn't fit, because it's such a different style of a movie. But with this, I was so happy that they used the theme, because it brought me back to like the old Godzilla movies, which is, I feel like that's what everybody wants so much. Yeah. Like, we miss Godzilla. It's been 12 years. Like, and he's such an iconic character. So that moment really did it for me.
Yeah, I mean, when you use it appropriately, like you have to use the theme right, and this one did. But either way, even the new music that was in it, all the original, not original, but the new original music was fantastic. Like, it really invoked a strong sense of dread. Yeah. And I think, bottom line, the soundtrack was amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
So, anything you didn't like about the movie?
There were, but I want to hear yours.
Okay. The only thing, I think, really, the main generic thing was that all the talking parts, I think it started to go on a little too long. Specifically, once it got to the third act, I think once you saw Godzilla at a certain part where we're not at the spoilers yet, but as soon as you can tell, like the final battle is starting to happen, but then it dies down again, and then there's like a lot of talking, and I think that if the talking scenes were cut down just a little more, like if it was like maybe an hour 45 minutes instead of 2 hours, I think it would have felt more entertaining, more consistent, because I started to get a little bored toward the end. That was my only complaint.
I can agree with that to an extent, but I will say for this movie, I actually was pretty invested in the story. And, we were reading, a subtitled version of it. I don't know if there's going to be a dubbed one later or something. But, I was sitting there. And the worst thing is if you're watching a subtitled movie and you're not interested, because then you're reading and it becomes really boring. But this movie, I actually really liked the characters and the story, and I was following along with it. And I wasn't bored with it. So I was pretty okay with the story. But the thing that I really... I don't know if I'm going to say that this is something I didn't like, but this is more of a preference. And the major thing for me is that this is a movie that is kind of like the original Godzilla from 1954/1956 in America, right? Where Godzilla is the bad guy, and that's fine when they do that sometimes. Focus on Godzilla like that, and I love the original Godzilla movie, but when you see all the Godzilla sequels, and he's fighting Ghidorah, and he's fighting, All Out Attack, and there's all these other monsters, and Orga, and all these great other characters. At this point in time, I kind of feel like I want to see... I don't want to go back again. I kind of just want to see the next chapter and what's going to happen. Because I've seen Godzilla be evil and destroy Japan before.
Yeah.
There's like
no Jet Jaguar.
It didn't get like really crazy. And that's one of the things I started to enjoy so much about the Godzilla movies, is how insane they got.
Yeah.
And like things are coming from space and they're going through time, and there's so much going on. And this movie's very basic, I would say.
Mostly, yeah. That's the thing, because like with all the talking parts, it's for one thing, it's very politically charged, which I don't know quite what to make of it. But also, it was basically just, how do we stop Godzilla? How do we stop Godzilla? And that's all everybody's talking about, And
I think that that's okay, because this is the first time we've seen Godzilla in a Toho movie in 12 years. So it's okay, because it's almost like rebooting it, so you kind of gotta start at square one. It might be weird if they just did this really bizarre movie and there hasn't been a Godzilla movie in 12 years.
Yeah.
But for me personally,
kind of like Star Wars, they started basic. They started basic over again just to get people back into it.
And I always say that. I think I said that back when they did the Ninja Turtle movie and the Batman, like Batman Begins and all that. I always want to see the next chapter. I get tired of the retellings, because I already know the story. So why do I have to hear it again? Especially, you wait such a long time to see your favorite characters again, and then they just retell the same story. It's like, well, the whole reason I was waiting all this time is to see the next thing.
You mentioned the subtitles. I thought a funny thing about the subtitles, we watched it with a group of people, and there were some parts that we found very comical because there were so many subtitles on screen, where the dialogue is very fast for one thing. So you're already, you're reading, but you're also trying to like look at the expressions of the characters, because I like to see the faces of the characters, and the subtitles do kind of like, I have to like read fast to get back to, I want to watch the expression in their face. But then also there's these subtitles at the top of the screen. I guess it would be subtitles. They'd be above titles.
That would tell you like the location they're in, or other information. Yeah.
It would tell you the floor that they're on, or something like that, or it would identify the people, the places. But also, since we were watching a screener version, it would have Toho's watermark, which had a whole bunch of text at the bottom. And then they would randomly start speaking in English every now and then. So when they'd speak in English, there'd be Japanese subtitles on top of the watermark, and then English subtitles again on top of the Japanese ones. And then there's subtitles at the top of the screen on top of the Japanese subtitles. And it was just like crazy amount of text.
It'd be really nice, like later on, when we're able to just watch a dubbed version without all the text on the screen.
Now, I mean, I know subtitles are more respected. I mean, I know we said dubbed. I think they each have their advantages. I wish I just knew the language, because then I'd be able to just enjoy the movie. But dubbed and subtitles, I think, each have their advantages. I think there can be bad dubbing where like the actors' voices are really silly and everything, and they don't match. But it's never. I mean, I don't mean the syncing. The syncing's never going to match completely because it's a different language. So anybody who makes fun of that is like, it's not going to match.
Sure.
You know, but there can be better actors doing the voices better. You know.
But to answer your question, I did not have a problem at all with subtitles.
No.
I enjoyed the story. It was good. Okay.
Spoiler alert. Now we move into the spoiler section. So overall, we both like the movie. But if you don't want to be spoiled at all, then this is where you stop it.
Cut it here.
All right. So we're carrying on. I want to talk about the first form of Godzilla. Now you could see this as a negative thing about it, but I got so much joy out of it that I don't think it's negative. But the first form of Godzilla in this movie is hilarious.
Yeah.
It was not what I expected at all. And when you see him, the first time you see his face, I equate it to, the first thing I thought of was like, this is like watching The Giant Claw from 1957. I did a review on that.
I thought it looked like one of the Muppets.
It looked like a lot of things. It reminded me of Reptilicus a bit. It had these big googly eyes that never blink, and it's just this long neck, and he's going around, he's destroying things, and cars are flying everywhere. And but what made me think so much of The Giant Claw was that The Giant Claw is a movie that starts off very serious, not totally serious, but competent. You know, it's competently made, and then all of a sudden you see this monster, and it just built it up to this whole time, and then finally when you see it, you're like, what the fuck? So
I remember when we were watching in the theater, James was sitting behind me, and I just hear him go, "What?" Like when he first appears on screen, and my thought was, okay, this is a different monster, and Godzilla's gonna appear later, and.
You didn't know that was going to be Godzilla.
It actually did turn out to be Godzilla. I didn't know just yet when you first see him that he was going to mutate. But I actually thought the mutation was really awesome. Yeah, he looks ridiculous when you first see him, but it makes sense as you continue to watch the movie.
And one thing I found really funny about it was just to think that if there really was a giant monster in real life destroying cities, it wouldn't matter what it looked like, you'd still have to be terrified. So if you actually did see the giant claw coming at you,
you're gonna shit your pants because it's gonna kill you.
Yeah.
Like, you might laugh a little while it's killing you. But.
Yeah, like would you be? There's, you know, like, I don't know. That's just such a hypothetical, like, weird thing to imagine. But
if you're gonna get killed by a monster, but it looks absolutely like it has like ping pong ball eyes,
I think
but it's gonna kill you.
Imagine if it looked exactly like the giant claw or Reptilicus. Like, would you laugh at all?
You would laugh until a certain point, until it starts like ripping your body parts off, and then you're not laughing anymore.
I think you'd just be so freaked out of your mind if that happened. So the later forms of Godzilla. So like when he's like, you know, his mouth is stretching open like Pac-Man, and he's shooting lasers, and lasers are coming out of his back.
That was all amazing.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome because, like, all the crazy stuff you're talking about, like, yeah, we didn't get, like, you know, King Ghidorah and stuff like that, or no Monster X or anything, but
well, not just other monsters, which is something that I love, and I did want to see other monsters. That was the one thing I was kind of disappointed at, that there weren't. I thought maybe at the very end they were going to do that, but they didn't.
It's kind of made that up for me, that the fact that I mean, first of all, I didn't mind that it's been a long time since they've done a movie where it's just Godzilla, but then also that Godzilla did so much crazy stuff that kept me you know, satisfied.
Yeah, but not just seeing other monsters, but what they would do in those movies. You've reviewed all the movies, so I know you know what I'm talking about. Like, he travels through time. And think about Godzilla Final Wars, and like all the shit going on in that movie. And like when there's aliens from outer space, and there's so much other shit that happens in the Godzilla movies, and you don't really see any of that kind of stuff in this. But the parts where Godzilla is actually fighting things, I thought it was amazing when this is the part that I really, really loved in the movie. So they're going to try to kill Godzilla, and they come along with the bombers, and one of the bombers drops a bomb down, and I guess Godzilla is still mutating, so one of the bombs like goes into his skin at one point, and then you see Godzilla bleeding, and then you're like, okay, well, one of the bombs got through, And because normally when army tanks and whatnot shoot Godzilla, they all like ricochet off. But this one like thing hits him, and so he actually gets hit, which normally doesn't even happen because it's like almost impossible to hurt Godzilla. So he gets hurt, blood comes out, and then he's like, you know, he's not a character that speaks, but you're like, okay, well, Godzilla's pissed now because now he got hurt. So he like leans down on the ground, he opens his mouth, and what I thought was so awesome is normally when Godzilla shoots his atomic breath, it just comes out in a straight line and blows something up. In this movie, he leans down, the fire comes out straight, but then it goes like in all different directions, and the fire goes down all the streets of Tokyo and just basically obliterates like most of Tokyo. That explosion reminded me of like Super Mecha Death Christ or something, just like blowing up the whole world. It was amazing.
That was one of my favorite things, was how unpredictable this Godzilla was. Because like I'm like, whoa, you didn't know Godzilla could do this now and this. I'm waiting for like a sledgehammer to come out of his ass or something. And like this is like a switchblade Godzilla. Like he's just doing all these different things.
And the other thing that was really cool that he did is. So that first time when that I just mentioned, when they get in that one hit on Godzilla, well, the next time I think Godzilla learned from experience, because then they send in more bombers to hit him again, but this time they can't get him because now his fins on the back start shooting those lasers, and now he can take out like aerial stuff. So I thought that was really cool. That okay, they got him once, but it didn't happen again. Don't fuck with Godzilla.
I can see some people might say that this is like too absurd, that they strayed too far from the character, but it's not like in the 98 version where they strayed. It's like this time they gave us more, not less. So I don't mind
that. I liked. I want to see more.
Yeah.
And
it's the 29th Godzilla film, so I don't mind seeing like these radical updates.
And yeah, that's one example when he was doing that kind of stuff. Like Godzilla's abilities basically are new. He's got new abilities. Yeah. And that is something that I thought was cool. I just wish that there was more stuff on top of that. More monsters and more crazy plot things going on. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, something I got to mention is that in my trailer response video, I talked about a theory I had, but I didn't want to say it in case it was true, and it wasn't true. So my theory did not happen in this movie, but I feel like I should just, for anybody who's curious, who saw that video, what I thought was going to happen, or what I suspected was going to happen was that because Godzilla is looking like a zombie in this movie, and you know, in the trailer you can see that he's like bleeding and everything, and I thought that he was going to start off as a skeleton, like possibly even the skeleton of the original Godzilla, and that he would like be regenerating as the movie goes on, so all the muscles and flesh would start to form, and by the end
that would have been cool if it was the skeleton from the first movie.
And by the end of the movie, it would be the regular Godzilla. You know,
I guess this movie was a reboot, right?
Totally reboot, yeah.
Because in the movie they're saying they've never heard of Godzilla before, and that always makes me like kind of sad in that it's not the same Godzilla. It's like a new Godzilla.
In a way, yeah. And they actually refer to him by both names. They have Gojira and Godzilla, and they actually explain, which is like, oh, the Americans call him Godzilla, and like. That was interesting to actually hear them called by both names.
But that would be an awesome idea, I think, actually, if they regenerated the bones from the first movie. So they already knew Godzilla existed. They saw what he did, but then the original Godzilla comes back. I think that's a great idea. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, because they're always doing stuff like that. Like in the Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, the 2003 version of it was... Mechagodzilla was built on the bones of the original Godzilla.
Oh, Mechagodzilla. See, that's the stuff that it's like, why I want to see more Mechagodzilla.
I mean, and they've done Mechagodzilla a lot, but
I could always go for another.
Yeah, if they bring Mechagodzilla back, I want to see Mechagodzilla be evil like the first one. Where aliens control him instead of it being like a military weapon.
The thing with me is I'm like a kid with these movies. It's like I just want all the monsters in there. I love what they did with Final Wars. It's like they threw them all in there because it's like I want to see all of them.
I mean, they're brief because you had so many in that movie that they had to be short.
You complained a little bit about the movie being too long.
Just a little.
I wish the movie was like 20 hours long.
Oh, yeah.
But you got to see like every monster there ever was.
What, a 20-hour
Godzilla movie. Yeah.
With every monster that ever appeared, like including Varan.
Well,
you know?
Here's why. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but I don't really want a 20-hour movie. But what I do want is in Final Wars, you know how like he fights one of the monsters, but it's like really, really quick because they have to fit in like 20 monsters into one movie. It would be awesome to have a Godzilla movie where there was a real fight, like an actual like long battle between each monster.
Oh, okay.
You know? Instead of just like, oh, the smog monster comes out, boom, and then smog monster's gone. How about, like, I would love to see him really fight the smog monster again, you know, for like a good 10 minutes. You know?
It just, I mean, realistically, that would just be several movies, but that would be cool if it was a 20-hour movie. Like, I never thought it. Like, not a series, just a straight-up 20-hour movie.
I mean, that's not possible, but you know what I mean. I basically, what I really am trying to say is that I would like to see more lengthy fights with all the classic Godzilla monsters again. It's nice to see Godzilla back after 12 years.
Not discounting the 2014 one. Good attempt.
I like that movie, but this was the first Toho,
Yeah.
which is the company that made the original films.
It felt legit.
It felt legitimate. I think you should see this movie, but going into it, I think you should know that there is a lot of talking. There's not... Half the movie, Godzilla's asleep. So Godzilla, if you're expecting it to be like a huge action-packed thing, there are scenes like that.
Yeah.
But,
and those scenes are amazing.
Oh, they're incredible. And it's a good movie, and you should see it if you love Godzilla, but I wouldn't expect to see too much of Godzilla.
He probably has about the same amount of screen time as the 2014 version, but it feels like more because it's spread out, and it isn't like they never tease you, you know, by building up to something and cutting away.
But I thought the movie was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how many cities this is playing, but check to see if it's playing near you. And it's going to be October 11th, limited theatrical run, but it's pretty cool that it is finally coming out here in theaters.
Go see it so that the movie makes money and they'll make another movie.
Yeah, hopefully they'll make more Godzillas after this.
You know?
Because I'm in it for both. I want to see, you know, the American ones with the whole Kong universe, you know.
I'm interested in that too.
Yeah.
But I really want to see a follow-up to this movie.
Yeah.
And have them bring in some different monsters. And what would be great, just to say what I would like really quick, is I would love to see some classic monsters come back, but also some new monsters.
Yeah, definitely.